Hello?
Right. It works.
Hello? 1, 2, 1, 2.
And I'm just going to go this way. It's really awkward. These stools don't work. Hello, everybody. I'm going to try and sit still. That's quite impossible. How did you do it?
Can you touch the floor?
Yeah, I can, with my little legs.
You're going to have to do that.
Right, so can everybody hear that okay? Is that all? Yeah, getting some nods? Okay. So my name's Andy Thorne. I'm from Factory Pattern. So we're a digital UX agency. And I brought Samuel here today who's one of our clients. And I'll let Samuel introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Samuel from Materials Market. We're a B2B and B2C digital marketplace in the construction industry, connecting buyers and sellers of building materials.
So today, this is what we're going to speak about. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of like how me and Samuel got to know each other, just to give you guys some context. And then we're going to go into the really interesting challenges of how do you get people to buy again? How do you keep people engaged? That whole kind of post-purchase experience, not just buying once, but looking after customers and buying together. And especially in the world where you've got a mix of B2B and B2C, this is going to be really helpful. Can I just get a show of hands who's got kind of B2B customers in e-commerce? This is going to be really relevant. Good. And then a show of hands who thinks they've got, even if they haven't got B2B, they've got B2C customers with kind of mixed kind of needs and wants. That should be everybody. Okay, perfect. So a bit of context. So I met Samuel probably two years ago now.
2 years, yeah.
So at the time, they'd done the first phase of their Materials Market website. We were brought on board to improve the experience of that website. So finding areas where people were dropping off, making conversions better, signing people up, et cetera, et cetera. So even though that's user experience, I always see that as kind of one part of user experience. So we help them improve the look and feel of the site, reduce bounce rate, improve conversions, all of that stuff. But that's a very small part of what these guys have done in terms of how they think about user experience. And even though we say we're the UX professionals at Factory Pattern, I think actually Materials Market are even better than us. So first of all, I guess, imagine if you had one customer and that all you had to do all day was sell to that customer, speak to them. They were the only customer that funded your business. Like it'd be the easiest business to run in the world, but we know that that's not true and we can't do that. So we've got to accept that we're going to go to tens, hundreds, thousands of customers. So scaling your team to deal with all of those customers is incredibly hard. And then it becomes harder when you've got a mix of needs. So you've got B2C customers who want one thing, and you've got B2B customers who want an entirely other thing. And so we're going to talk about the kind of key challenges that Materials Market have faced, and then some solutions that they've been through, and Samuel will admit they've not all worked, and there's definitely been some kind of mistakes, and some things didn't work how they expected, and I think that's actually more interesting to learn about. And just to give you guys an idea on how they've done things, and we will mention AI, because if we don't, we'll get kicked out of this conference, but that's going to be right at the end, and it's not a big bit. This is more about mixing people and technology and how all that works. So I'm going to open my analog notebook. Right, so
It's not very digital of you, Andy.
not very digital. So first of all, the kind of 4 key challenges are audience mix. Like how do you deal with a mix of audience? Even if you just had an audience of B2C and their differing needs, how do you deal with that? Checkout differences. So how do you treat people differently at checkout and making sure that they get what they want, and also buying things? In-account benefits. So Samuel's going to talk about how they deal with B2B customers when they've signed up for an account and why they sign up for an account. Because most people want a guest checkout. They want a quick experience. They don't want to start a relationship. How do you encourage customers to have that relationship for you? But more importantly, how do you provide that value to them, both on the website, but then backed up with a team? And then finally, the kind of pricing bit for B2B customers. How do you compete on pricing when there's so many huge companies out there that are watching all of your prices and you're kind of competing with each other? So first of all, we'll go through the audience mix. So do you want to speak, Samuel, about kind of marketing to both like B2C, kind of DIYers, and then your B2B bulk buyers and the challenges of that?
Yeah, so as an e-commerce site, we're ranking on Google, and so that attracts a massive mix of B2C and B2B. And really the challenge starts like on the product page itself, because a lot of, if you think about e-commerce, it's going from one product page to the other, adding stuff to your basket, maybe reading a bit about those products. In our industry, the tradespeople, the B2B customers, they know the products already, so they're not really interested in reading like some piece we've written about plasterboard to try and get Google to put us in first position. So actually what we found is the mere act of going from product page to product page and adding it to your basket is not something that B2B customers want to do. The way that they build an order is they would rather stay on the same page, so no URL changes, and basically add those products from that single page and see the order being created there in front of them. So like very early on, we came across that challenge, and what we did to try and fix that was we built into the accounts popular products feature, which essentially allowed those B2B customers to build an order without navigating from product page to product page. So that's like at the start of the journey straight away. There's those sorts of issues. Another example is in the product search. B2B customers call products different things to B2C customers. So obviously with B2C customers, you have an incredibly descriptive product name, which tries to encapsulate all the keywords that you want to rank for. B2B customers, like there's a product in the construction industry called multi-finish plaster, and no trade person calls it that. They call it skim, which because they skim it on the walls. So we couldn't put that in the title because it would put off the B2C audience. But what we did was we added it as an alternative term in the back end. So essentially, if someone types in the word skim, the product appears, but it's not actually contained within the product title. So these kind of little things allow you to sell to those B2C customers, but also to those B2B customers as well, without alienating either audience. If you talk about checkout, we're a bit of like victims of our own success, really, because we forced all our customers to create an account when we started, and then we introduced guest checkout, and we spent a lot of time building that, and immediately, like more than 50% of our customers started using that guest checkout feature, and that's right for the B2C audience, and that's like product market fit for that audience. But how do you stop those B2B customers from using that guest checkout, and how do you move them into an account space where you can start to offer some of the key account benefits? And again, the answer is to try and communicate those benefits as early on in the customer journey as possible. So like we offer trade credit as a payment option for B2B customers. Now you have to have an account to do that. So we just plaster that option all over the product pages and in the checkout as well. And really what it's about is moving those B2B customers into a space which is an account where you can then start to market further to them these extra features. But the checkout is a tricky one, because obviously they're right at the end of their journey. And I remember you and I had multiple calls on what color a button should be.
Lots of arguments.
Yeah, lots of arguments. And it's, you're conscious that you're touching customers right before they click that, proceed to payment button. So any change that you make has to have a lot of testing behind it. And I think, it's just very difficult to build for both audiences. And the way to do it is to try and map those two journeys and make sure that where they meet, which is at the checkout page, that you've got a sales pitch to both, but you're not selling it to the point where you're alienating one or the other, audience.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things. So we kind of come back to these guys and said, right, you've got too many fields in your checkout. You're forcing people to make an account. It adds a lot of friction to that process. But then when Samuel said, well, we want to know who's trade, we want to know who's B2C, because we need to do we'll talk about that in a bit, kind of how to communicate with them. So that's really important. So definitely emphasizing those benefits is really important. And so one thing that I guess is slightly different is that you just tick a box to say, I'm a trade, I'm a B2C customer. I guess the challenge there is if they still go to the guest checkout, how have you guys managed to capture them after that?
Sure. So, customer segmentation at checkout is a tricky one, and it's one we went back and forth with for quite a while, because obviously adding any friction at that point can have a damaging effect on conversion rates, but we figured a simple tick box of DIY or trade wouldn't put customers off too much, and when we rolled it out, we didn't see any adverse effect on conversion rates. And what that allowed us to do is whether they checked out as a guest or whether they checked out with an account, what we did was we fed that segmentation through into HubSpot, and then we built workflows off the back of that to target those customers. So HubSpot, obviously there's other tools out there, but essentially allows you to build customer segmentation and then build targeted approaches to target those customers thereafter. So we've got a team of 6 salespeople, and they basically, when a customer checks out, a new customer checks out as a trade customer, they get a ticket raised to say, hey, call this trade customer and try and engage them on a deeper level. If they have an account, then obviously we can start talking about the in-account benefits and start actually adding those to their account. If they don't, we can try and get them to create an account. But the key thing in the construction industry is that so many of our customers are old school. And I'm saying the construction industry really in B2B in general, it requires a much more analog approach. So we were conscious, when we first started using HubSpot, we were like, okay, if the customer does this at 9 o'clock in the morning and has just had scrambled eggs, serve them this thing. And, if they've done this, serve them something else. But actually, you can't go down that granular. And we, after trying lots of very complicated workflows based on all types of behavior, what we found was the best thing that worked was just simply new trade customer, flag it to our salespeople, get them to call the customer and say, hey, I just saw you just made your first purchase on Materials Market, welcome to the platform. Let me just tell you a little bit more about what we do. And actually the customers responded to that a lot better because they don't, a lot of them, they've taken that first leap in the digital space and ordered those construction materials online, but, they're they're at the early stages of being convinced about that. So to actually get a phone call, a load of them started leaving reviews and they were like, oh, I got a phone call afterwards, And so it was kind of back to analog for us. Having tried to do it digitally for a while, it was still using the digital side to segment the customers, but then actually how do we turn it into an approach that's going to be received well?
How do you, so once you start that phone relationship, how do you stop them calling you, placing an order? Because that's got to be something that builders will do a lot, I just need this, that, and the other really quickly. So how do you then go, right, you need to go back online and you do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, the good thing is that any customer that has come and checked out on your website of their own accord, has some sort of willingness to try something, online e-commerce. A lot of our customers find us because they couldn't find the material anywhere else and they kind of take a shot at it. So it's a very short window of opportunity that we have to pull them in. But, we're VC backed, and, what the VCs want to see is they want to see automation and customers checking out of their own accord. They don't want to see a team of 50 salespeople calling those customers every day and taking orders like that. So, what we did was we focused on the in-account features to make it much easier for those customers to purchase. So, one example is trade discounts. So, if you're logged in as a trade customer, you see different prices to the customers on the B2C side who haven't checked in, who haven't logged in. And also, having a space where those customers can build their basket from a single page, which I mentioned already. And then, stuff like saved addresses, all these kind of standard things that are really pertinent for a B2B customer who might have 6 different projects on at the same time, doesn't want to be going through a long checkout approach every time. Because I often find it funny, people will guest check out 6 times from the same website, and every time they're like, I just can't be bothered to spend that extra 5 seconds that it takes to create an account. But actually, if they were doing that every day and they knew they were going to make 5 purchases, it would be quicker for them to do that. So I think the answer is, once you've engaged them on an analog level, to try and then transition them back into that digital side, but by signposting to them the features that are going to allow them to continue to transact with you, autonomously.
And I think what's really clear about Materials Market is that Samuel's background is in construction. I think that's really helped. So, but with your sales support team, do you have to share your construction knowledge? Because like you said, that difference in language is really important, especially when it comes to segmentation and kind of emailing B2C customers, emailing B2B. Like, how do you deal with that and help your sort of sales support team?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the segmentation's really good at that, because what it allows you to do is to like A/B test different emails for DIY to B2B audiences, and it essentially allows you can talk in a different way to B2B and trade customers than you would to B2C customers. So what we do is we try and use more colloquial language, more industry level language when we're communicating with those B2B customers, and that really helps to drive that engagement piece.
And then I guess, so that's kind of the segmentation piece, but then in terms of the data-driven bit, so these guys use data in quite an interesting way. So one of the things that you mentioned was the kind of purchase times of B2B and just not like stopping that customer churn of like these guys know when someone's going to drop off and when to actually reach out to them and say, are you ready again? So do you want to talk a bit about how that works?
Yeah, so what we do is we look at once a customer's spending regularly, what we do is we analyze the average purchase time between each order. So essentially, you have some customers that might buy on average every 9 days, and you might have customers that buy on average every 30 days. So rather than saying, I'll just reach out to every customer once they haven't bought for 30 days, if you do that to some customers who buy every 45 days, you're reaching out to them way too early and they're just going to get annoyed. So what we do is we look at the average purchase times between orders, and then essentially we build, we use the HubSpot automations to try and work out, 5 days after that customer should have bought, like technically they've churned then. So what we try and do is we then reach out to that customer, after their average purchase time and try and re-engage them. And that time can vary depending on that customer's behavior. So rather than taking a blanket approach, it's really important to use a sort of AI to nurture them in a more specific way.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's just avoiding that kind of blanket approach, because that's just the thing that just puts a load of people off. And we've seen a lot of it where clients just go hammer, 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 and they really don't care. And then, so if we just had our 10-minute warning, is that a 10-minute warning?
But we could do AI pricing quickly.
Right, we'll talk about AI pricing now, because I did promise you we get onto AI. So I guess one of the challenges, especially in sort of commercial B2B world, and especially with construction, where these guys are up against Travis Perkins and all those giants, and they've really got to compete with them. And so do you want to talk a bit about what you're doing there? And
yeah, so just very quickly on the AI point, on e-commerce, when you're pricing products essentially that could be bought in any combination to any location in the UK, and the basket could contain millions of different combos. And in our model, geography is really important. So if a customer places a £2,000 order for delivery in London, that's going to be a lot easier to allocate than a £500 order for delivery in Scotland. So our customers, our B2B customers, expect pricing to be based on the specific criteria of their order. So what we've built for our B2B customers is essentially a widget that allows them to put in a postcode, put in products, and then it will automatically calculate what the price should be for their order on a bespoke basis. And if they change any of those criteria, so if they change the number of products, if they change the postcode, then the price will readjust. And that's really key for the B2B customer, because they want to feel like they're getting that tailored experience. And essentially, where the AI comes in is we use machine learning to estimate what the pricing should be based on those criteria. And we found much stronger engagement on that side since we're able to offer that bespoke pricing experience.
Yeah, and I think again it's that time saving, because if you had a team, they've just got a team of 6 sales support. If you were trying to do that manually, you'd have to have a much bigger team. And I think all of this, everything they've done, these guys have done with technology and the support team behind it, allows them to scale. Realistically, if you just relied on kind of human input, there's no way that the business would be able to scale the way it does. So we're going to go into QA in a minute, but I think in kind of summary, so I think these guys do a really shining example of how to nurture both B2B whilst not ignoring B2C, because that's still an important part of their business, but just being smart with kind of small, agile, flexible teams, but allowing the technology to assist them and not allowing the technology to hammer their customers, because definitely we've had clients, and we've been guilty of that before, where we've just gone, oh, they've got a massive email list, let's just hammer these as much as possible, because we might get a really good conversion rate on email once, but long term you're just going to lose a lot of people. So I think that, it's just a really smart way of kind of an example, and hopefully help you guys on how to kind of think about that. So before we finish up, has anybody got any questions? Can we get a mic? You can borrow mine if you want. Now you can have a mic.
Hello. So it's just on that last point about the pricing then. So does that mean the trade customer doesn't know what his total basket cost is going to be until he's completed the basket? And if that's so, do you see people complete the whole basket and then decide not to convert the sale because they're not happy with the price that they thought they might get?
Yeah, it's a good question. So essentially, obviously as an e-commerce site, we have to have published prices because, when we're doing PPC and stuff, you can't do that and you're not going to rank anywhere if you don't have prices. So any customer can build a basket, but essentially, once we know the criteria of that order, so once we know the product combinations, and once we know the postcode of that order, we're able to do a further assessment of what, if that order was just self-contained within that order and was going to be placed as that order, we're able to do a further assessment of what better price might be available for that. But it's only within the context of that specific example. So, but that's the drawback of e-commerce in general, is that if you're trying to sell a product that is geographically sensitive, you have to put a price on there that essentially represents the worst case scenario. So that's one of the problems, like e-commerce website versus platform, And actually it's very hard to rank on Google without prices, but actually putting prices on there can be a real finger in the air exercise. And I don't think it'll ever be solved, because people are used to buying on Amazon and eBay where you have sort of, static pricing like that. So it's a conundrum, but I think, for B2B, they're willing to engage on that further level and actually take a minute to build their basket in the hopes of getting 3 or 4%, which in construction could be 50, 60 pounds, on an order. So, yeah, if that makes sense.
Got another question?
Hi there, John Marr from Merlin Showering. Great content, first and foremost. Coming from a B2C background and now having moved into B2B, one of the biggest kind of friction points, obviously in B2C, is the things that I've heard frequently about cart abandonment. I always focus on, let's say,
Can you just hold the mic up a little bit?
Sorry, yeah. Talking about cart abandonment. In B2B, what are the common themes that you find? Because I'd imagine in B2B, people are much more task-focused, result-focused, versus, let's say, there's more researchers in B2C. What are the common themes you find in B2B cart abandonment?
Sure. I think payment options is a really big one. So, not being able to purchase on credit for our B2B customers was a massive thing. They would get to checkout, see that they could only pay by card, and then churn essentially or abandon their basket. So B2B customers traditionally want a bit more flexibility when it comes to that, as opposed to B2C customers. But I think there's an interesting distinction. I mean, in our experience, the B2B customers spend less time, thinking about their order. Once they come to the site to place an order, they usually go ahead with it because, they're buying because they need it. Whereas a B2C customer's buying because they want it, and they're browsing more. We have B2C customers reaching out to us, being like, "Oh, I'm pondering about spending £200 on your site," and we're like, "I can't believe you even picked up the phone. Is there any way to block these numbers?" So. Yeah, it's a tricky one, but you open, obviously on e-commerce, you kind of open yourselves up to any customer type. But yeah, for B2B, I would say the cart abandonment rates are probably lower, but there's certain key things that if you don't have them, you just won't get those customers, and those longer payment terms is one of them.
Really interested in your pricing attitude, and I can see how geography is an immediate and easily understood by your customer as well as by you, right? I live a long way away or I don't. But what would cross into B2C more is if you adjusted those prices depending on the customer. So either their browsing history or their loyalty to your... Do you do that as well, or is it just simply the basket size and the location?
Yeah, so we haven't started working. I know that there's personalization tools out there for that kind of thing, which basically start tracking a customer as soon as they land on the site and serve them different, have you considered this product before, personalization? And that's something we need to look into. So far, the AI has focused more on the basket stuff that I was talking about, but have you had experience, Andy, of working on that B2C side?
Yeah, so so far it's been people with accounts. Like we can use kind of cookies and things like that, but that's becoming a bit less reliable, especially when they're on iPhone 14 and beyond. But yeah, we are able to do that when it comes to customers who have logged in. That's a lot easier to see their kind of purchase history, and then what we're always trying to do is stop the user doing the heavy lifting and make the website work super hard. And that's definitely the next thing that we're starting to look at. But we've done things with, you've bought this before, do you want to add that again? And that's particularly important for things like subscription products. So we've got a company who sell dog food, and they want to really push people to subscribe, but trying to get people to subscribe to things is fucking difficult, and because it's a big risk. So they'll make the one-off purchase, but what we want to do is catch them when they come back. So rather than just they haven't created an account, but we rely on a lot of email marketing and then push them back so we get all the one-off. So that's one way, is email marketing, because that owns data has really helped us to push them back and buy again. So that can really help as well. And then we hardly ever find we'll get the subscriber on one sale. It might be the second or the third. So yeah, I guess that's one of the examples that we've got where we've pushed people to go, oh, you've bought before, do you want all these things? Rebuild your basket and make it seem like they're subscribing to it and buying again. So making that easier has been good. One more question? Oh, no. Can't she ask? She's got a burning question.
She can come up and ask her.
You can come up after. Thank you, everybody. That was really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.